Welcome to the Digital Agency Growth Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Englander. JC, thanks for coming on the show.
What's up, brother?
Not too much, man. So I'm randomly in Toronto, Canada, traveling around, and you're in Managua or Nicaragua. I'm not sure if it's Managua.
Yeah, Managua, Nicaragua, Central America.
Yeah, very cool. And with that, it sounds like you've had a pretty interesting journey, kind of starting in the agency space and moving on to building out this franchise model, new products and stuff. So I'd love to just give you the floor and kind of hear the 50,000 foot view of that.
Yeah, 50,000 foot view. So I was sold a couple of companies and had the opportunity to get into an agency that was growing and scaling, and jumped in. This was about 7 years ago. I jumped into an agency and we ended up taking it to about 350 team members, give or take, about 1,500 clients in total, premier partner of Google. We were going nuts, and decided to leave that, decided to take an exit, and wanted to do something different, wanted to do something new. And you can have this whole story out there. You can go check it out if you want to. But during this phase, we wanted to tackle, at this moment, white label was really like, there was a few small people doing it, but nobody was doing it really, really great, right? And so we jumped into the white label world, right? So you grow your agency in the US, products way too expensive, so you get us to do it for you. SEO, PPC, Facebook ads. And we spent the first 2 years of Hite growing actually at a pretty good rate. In fact, we were on track by year 3. We should have been in the top, 1,000 on the 5,000 list. Within 2 years, we had about 100 team members, 80, 100 team members. And so we were moving along. And something frustrated me, man. It was like we were growing, but our partners were not really growing. Like the agencies that we served, it was like, instead of having 10, now we have 12. But those 10, it's not like they were double the size, right? Like we were growing horizontally, not vertically. And, what does that look like? Like, can we actually do you want to be a part of a company that's not truly serving our mission? In fact, if we look at the stats, it was basically like out of every, let's say 10 partners, let's say, 2 were really growing and scaling, 3 or 4 were kind of staying the same, and then 4 were just dropping off. That's, I was a 2.0 student, but so I know what failing looks like, and that was not a really good, good number. And so we started going out and going, man, there's got to be something new, and we came up with this model that in the legal world, they call it the franchise model. We actually didn't know that until, we got down to it. And now we're, 6 months after that process, we are the first legalized franchise for digital marketing in the US. And what we found, though, and maybe this speaks to your audience, is that like what we found in that process is there's 4 pillars of scalability, and they all 4 matter. Like if you don't have any one of the 4, you'll go under. One is obviously product. You have to have good product, right? You have to have good product, quality product that's going to have low churn. You have to have good sales. You got to be able to sell these products. You have to have good operations and systems to be able to manage 30, 40, 50, 60 clients. And then also the business intelligence, right? Like just understanding like when to hire, when to fire, when to double down, what products do I sell? How do I navigate complexity, right? And these 4 things. And what we found was in a white label world was that every agency was getting different knowledge and resources from different people with each category. So for example, they were going, okay, I got a white label company. So they're telling me what product I should have. But then I got a sales coach, and the sales coaches, even the product guys, are saying, and you should sell more SEO because SEO doesn't churn as much. It's easier to manage. And then my sales guy is like, no, but I think you should be selling Facebook ads because, man, Facebook ads has a high ROI and it's easy to sell, right? And then my operations person, I'm over here with Sean Clark because he's a good buddy, right? And Sean's going like, no, you should be selling SaaS, right? It's so you end up with like all these pillars with like, it's not really a circle. It's not really like a symbiotic motion, which it's like a square, right? And in business, we all know that we have to have you have to have symmetry between your different departments in order to really get momentum, right? In order to really take that wheel. And so we broke into franchising. We're 7 months in. We have purged 80 white label partners. In the meantime, sold 15 franchises. So down 80, up 15. And during that time, we've tripled our revenue.
Right.
to show you how fast they're growing compared to white label. And so, yeah, that's what we're doing. And
would you mind digging into that a little bit more? Like, what does the franchise model actually look like when it comes to digital marketing?
So I kind of think of it, and some of the users might be able to see on YouTube, but you think of your hand, right? And you think of an agency and your hand loosely, you got to, as an entrepreneur, we got to think about all these things, right? Like not only the pillars, but like hiring and firing and who do I hire and how do I hire? You got to think of finances and money and all this good stuff. And you got to think of product and innovation and what product should I be selling? And you got to think of sales and how to build a sales team. And is what I'm doing even scalable? And then you got to think of systems. And then you're thinking about systems to manage the 5 clients you have today, but you don't think like, what about the 100 clients? What about the 1,000 clients, right? Because all these different, and so we have all these things that we're halfway working on, right? What a franchise model is, it goes, you know what? There's a lot of things in the agency world and business that are congruent across all users, right? So like in real estate, if you're in real estate, Century 21, 35 years ago, Century 35 years ago, real estate, every realtor in the world was independent. In fact, it was just like digital marketing in the sense that you didn't need any type of special degree, you didn't need even a license 35 years ago. You didn't even sell your own product. You sold someone else's product, right? Hello, kind of like white label. And as long as you communicated well, spoke effectively, hustled, worked hard, you could make some pretty good money. Now, a lot of people lost money, but a lot of people make really good money. And Century 21 came along and they had this very simple idea. It was like, you built a website, there's thousands of realtors here. We all built the website. We all built the same website. Header, footer, call to action, like it's all the same thing. What if we built just one website and we all used it and shared it? It'd be a fraction of the cost and it would probably be 10 times better. What about systems? We're all trying to do the same thing, right? Like lead comes in, when the lead comes in, we automate a call, like what if we just built one system and that system was 10 times better than anything we could buy individually, but yet we split the cost and it's half the price? What about branding? And so in the marketing world, that's what we've done, right? So we've centralized fulfillment. All of our fulfillment is in-house. It's all done in our offices with our team. The sales, our sales processes, our sales methodologies, our sales coaching is all done around what products we sell and how to drive it. Our operations and systems were fully built on Salesforce that integrate with our product, with our systems already built out. I mean, we've got 5 full-time Salesforce developers doing nothing but creating operations for our franchisees. And so you start with one individual trying to sell, trying to fulfill, and now all of a sudden you're 170. You're 170 strong trying to grow and scale. And so the franchise model just simply goes, okay, all of these things that we need to do that are basically the same across the board, let's just get those done one setting, and then let's share them, right? Share the resources.
Yeah. And that's super cool. And one thing that I think about is when you think about a franchise, you think about whatever, McDonald's, Chick-fil-A, real estate, and there's these sort of like big old companies, and the sort of person that wants to be an independent restaurant entrepreneur might not be the same sort of person that wants to be a franchisee for like a McDonald's or something like that.
Potentially,
sort of a different mindset. So I'd love to hear like thinking about potential agency owners. They're very like, the stereotype is like people that have big ideas and they're set in their ways and they want to set up this sort of campaign in this particular way. So it's kind of a big question, but how did you go about, selling your vision and your point of view and getting a bunch of people to go along with that kind of like hook, line, and sinker, if that makes sense?
So we have a waiting line right now, believe it or not. So we're only bringing on 4 franchises per quarter. Right now, we're almost sold for January already. And so we're already kind of working on April, right? But we get a lot of like, what the joke is this? Is it even real? Like, do I really want to be a McDonald's, right? There's a lot of franchises out there that are not McDonald's, right? Like all of your real estate agents are very much independent. They work exactly how they want to. Insurance, you look at shelter and you look at anything in the insurance space, typically is franchise. You look at automotive, your local Ford dealership is a franchise, right? Like it's Ford does not have their dealership there. It's McCarthy's dealership. Ford is just the logo and the name and the systems and the processes, right? In fact, so there's 2 kind of molds that you could do. You can do the push or you can do the pull, right? So the reasons for becoming like, there's nothing in a good franchise model, there's nothing that would hinder you. It's not, I mean, like if you're like, bro, I want to go on social media and talk about stupid crap. Okay, yeah, you can't do that. We're going to stop you from talking crazy junk online. We're going to stop you from doing that. But like, I want to scale, I want to grow, I want to go out and test this new offer. I want to like, there's probably not too many things that you're not going to align on that we're going to hold you back from. However, on the flip side, we are going to help you. Most agency owners today, they have some type of end goal. And normally it's like three things they need to be thinking about. Either one, they need to sell. They want to set it up for a sell. Either two, they want to set it up so that a manager takes over and they can work a lot less. Or three, they're not thinking about this one, but they should. But it's because it's the bad side of these is I die. Something happens to me and my wife has to take over the agency, right? Like these are the three things that are going to happen eventually, or it's just going to go under, I guess, is the fourth option. In any three cases, what I like to look at is what is the best case for me to be in. Okay, so let's move this to another industry. If I wanted to sell my haircut spot place, would I rather have Moe's Barbershop? Or would I rather have a sports clip? Which one do you think would be easier to sell? Sports clips. Which one do you think would have a higher multiple? Sports clips, by far. You look at any industry, we go McDonald's versus the burger. Now, are there people that love to own their own local burger shack just because that's their heart and their breath? And like, I want to just own my own. Yeah, of course. Can they be successful? Hell yes, they can. Like they can be incredibly successful. But most people are going, I want to be able to build a business that serves my family. I want to be able to build a business that I could take an exit, that I could retire from, that I could whatever from. And let's look at the third option. If you do pass away, heaven forbid. And I ask this to a lot of agency owners when I'm speaking on stage or I'm consulting. I'm like, what would happen if you died? Would your wife be able to take it over? And a lot of the answers are no. A lot of time, the answer is no. And so in a franchise model, you actually have stability there. You have operations. As a franchisor, I can't just let your franchise go under because I would have to disclose that, right? We have to have disclosure documents when it comes to franchising. So if a franchise goes under, I got to then forevermore go, yeah, we sold 22 franchises and only 3 went bankrupt, right? Like,
yeah,
can't say that, right? And so,
yeah.
so you have a lot more support in the long game. And then the other side is how do you compete? Like if franchising does take off, when's the last time you saw an independent realtor?
It's been a while.
It's been a long time.
Yeah.
Why is that? Because you can't compete with them. Like, so in our model right now, and we're just getting started, there's no way you can undercut me on pricing. Most of my fulfillment is done right here in our Central American office where I'm at today. Yeah, you can go to the Philippines and match our cost, but you can't go under. And oh, by the way, we're big enough that I can take a loss for a year and still be okay, right? So you can't beat our prices. Operationally speaking, like, can you build better systems? Maybe, perhaps, right? Like, could you have more local presence? Hey, but we're here locally. We're right here in Texas. Cool. I got 4 offices in Texas right now, right? Like you can't beat our levels of service because we're locally across the US, right? And so you look like as you start building that leverage, how do you compete? And oh, by the way, it's cheaper too. It's actually cheaper to be in a franchise model than it's not as well, right? Because of the economies of scale, right?
Yeah, anyway. It's very cool. And I'd love to see, I look forward to seeing how it all progresses and everything. To shift gears a little bit, I'd love to get into how you built it, and I think that it sounds like you guys have scaled to 100 plus employees and that sort of thing. On your show, you talk a lot about the importance of hustle and, owners doing a lot at the earliest stages. So to make a question more tangible, like when did you hire your first salesperson, for example? Like how did you start kind of stair stepping out of things and moving on to bigger things?
So my first person that I hired was Gus. Gus, actually, I hired him very, very quickly because he's my product and I was going to be the sales, right? So for me, I think this is very much a personal question of like, what are your gifts and abilities? So my gift was communication. I like to talk. I enjoy talking. And so I needed to find someone to offset that, right? If I knew product, I would have waited on him, but I didn't know product at all in the beginning because even though I worked for a larger agency, I was fully on the service and sales side over there as well. And so I think where I think a lot of us mess up when it comes to hiring, number one, financially, like, can we afford to hire someone, right? Like if you're in a position where you don't have savings and you have debt and all this good stuff, like even if you suck at sales, like you're a 3 and you're going to hire a 7, I think a 3 as an owner is more powerful than a 7 as a sales rep, me personally, just because like, just own it, be humble. And like, dude, I'm just trying to grow my business. Like, and I think that goes a long way. The other side where I think we mess up when we come to recruiting and hiring, and maybe this plays into this, is that when we hire someone, someone has to be the expert. Okay. Someone has to be the expert. So either I'm the expert or I'm hiring an expert. And most of the time when people talk about hiring, they're hiring a VA. Well, when I think of VA, I don't think expert, right? I think of virtual assistant. I think of someone I'm going to have to teach. Well, if I am not the expert and I'm hiring someone who I don't know is the expert, how do I coach them? How do I teach them? How do I audit them? How do I know if they're even doing great, good, bad, ugly, right? And so like I'm hiring a sales guy and I suck at sales and I know I suck at sales. Well, how do I know how he should be answering the phone? How do I know if he's doing good or bad? How do I know because he's going to blame the leads, right? He's going to blame marketing, right? And so it's impossible for us to really understand how to coach someone if we don't understand the position. So what is the opposite side of that is like, for me, what I try to do, and it's not always possible, what I try to do is I wait until I can afford someone that I have a lot of faith that comes with that experience. And you're not going to find, especially in the sales world, you're not going to find that posting on a job board and all the salespeople raising their hand, because good salespeople are not looking for a job, right? You got to go recruit those people, right? It's the same thing with a product side, right? Most decent product people they're not hanging out. So what do? Well, you go to other small agencies, ones that have 4 or 5, 6 people. You look at their product guys, who's been there 2 years, who's been there 1 year, and then you write them, and you do that 100 times, and you try to find someone who's been at a company for a couple of years. For me, that's going to be the best example of like, hey, this guy probably knows what they're doing, because I have no idea what I'm doing, right? And so either I'm going to be the expert, I'm going to figure it out or learn it to a point where it's profitable, so that I can teach someone else, or I can at least know that they're doing a good job. Or I'm going to wait until I can find someone who can come in and be that expert. Today at Hite, 170 team members, we have 2 salespeople on the team. 2. And just so you know, we're not quite to $1 million in revenue, but we're getting pretty close.
Very cool. That's super interesting. And there's probably a lot to dig into there. I guess one is why 2 salespeople? I mean, it seems like there's so much market. Like, are there plans to get more? Like, how have you landed on those 2?
So it's about our model. So it's a little facetious thing to say, but because our model was white labeled and now it's franchising, every one of my franchisors is a salesperson, but it's an owner that's a salesperson. It's not an employee that's a salesperson. It's Caleb Luketic in Nashville, Tennessee, who owns Hite Digital Nashville, selling his heart out like crazy because he's an entrepreneur and he's crushing it, right? It's Adam, who's doing 80,000 in revenue in his agency. He's our sales guy, right? Because he owns Hite Digital St. Louis, right? And so we have no salespeople, right? But we have a bunch of franchisors who are owner/salespeople, right? And so and again, these are some of the benefits of completely changing this dynamic of the model, right? Uber doesn't have any salespeople, right? It's all the cars out there that are their, salespeople, right?
Yeah. So it sounds like you have this network effect with the franchise model. And before that, when you guys were just doing the white label side of this and kind of building the foundation for it, you said, and this is tying into your episode on scaling myths, which I thought was great. And there's one that I definitely agree with. And I've changed my tune on this because I think like in the early days, I was definitely part of the niche down bandwagon. And now I think of it more in terms of specialization, right? It's not so much niching as it is about having something that's repeatable, whether it's by audience or by verticals or something else that you can do. So I'd love to just learn, how do you feel about specialization? On one hand, if you're an agency and you're all over the place reinventing the wheel every day, that doesn't work. On the other hand, if you niche down too much, that's risky. So what did it take for you guys to specialize, and what did you learn from that experience?
Yeah. And so you're the one other person out there that might agree with me on this subject then. So most people are very much into niche, type of stuff. And I like your word of specialization, right? And we can define that as like specializing in SEO or PPC or, some different things there, right? I graduated college with a 2.01 GPA, and I went to a private high school of the university, like that had a university. So I knew I could get into it as long as I passed, essentially, right? I'm not super smart. So, but one of the things I am good at, which I guess helps me look smarter than what I am, is I love watching people that are winning. And I'm not talking about the Facebook group, the GHL group where 99% of the audience has 3 clients or less. I'm talking about the big boys. What is Reach Local doing? What is Scorpion doing? What are the White Sharks doing? What are the biggest agencies in the US? What are they doing? And what are they not doing? Because it would be arrogant of me to think that I know something that Reach Local, who was owned by Gannett, who's owned by USA Today, like, it's probably foolish to me think I have some type of secret advantage that they've never heard of, right? So I like to watch what they're doing. And it's always interested me that they are not niche down and all this good stuff, right? So let's back up though. Where do we get clients? So I think you do have to niche down if you're doing cold outreach. And I think probably you would agree with that, right? Like if I'm running Facebook ads cold, or if I'm doing email marketing cold, of course, niche that junk down, buy a list of roofers, of whatever, so on and so forth. But as an agency, I'm really big into my network. So if you can really learn how to post socially daily, like on your Facebook, posting daily, talking about building authority in your network. If you can reach out to your local community, I talk a lot about going to Lowe's, sit in the parking lot, and going through that strategy, which I can go in if you want me to. When you first start your agency. When you first start your agency, it's all about building rapport. The more rapport you can build locally, not through cold traffic, it's much easier through referrals or local. The more rapport you can build, the easier it is to get off that scalability. Because most people struggle is they get 2, 3, 4 clients and they lose one, they gain one, they lose one, they gain one, they lose 2, they gain 1. And they're in this like really difficult limbo because the rapport hasn't built. So this is biblical stuff, right? The Bible says love covers a multitude of sins. The more relationship I can build with Dan, not if I screw up, but when I screw up, the easier it is for us to overcome it. And so again, building relationships is much easier when it comes to referrals. So calling your friends, like really asking, like, who do you know? I'm an entrepreneur. The world loves entrepreneurs. Like, we love it. We have this little soft spot in our hearts for firefighters and for entrepreneurs. These guys that are poor as dirt and trying to make it, like we just have our heart, soft spot. So ask them, like, dude, be humble. And then do these posts daily, and people slowly start to get to know you. They'll start to get to know who you are and what you're doing. And so if you do that type of stuff, the niche doesn't matter. SEO, it doesn't matter if you're a church or a freaking roofer or a plumber or a strip club. SEO is SEO. Like, it's the same formula either way, right?
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you say that, because that gels with a lot of what we do and a lot of what we're doing for clients. And it's really kind of like channeling. I mean, you use the word biblical, but it's channeling something ancient, which is, and something that I think is pretty timeless, which is the trust that goes along with a relationship and getting, building connections through your friends or your friends of friends. And that's a lot of what we're doing at scale, and just taking the old school to the new school and that sort of thing. That sounds like that's what you've done as well, to build the agency, which is awesome. I think, maybe adjacent to that is something that I've heard a lot about. It seems to be a big trend recently. And it's definitely true in our business. I was at a conference, Robert Rose was talking about this, and it's kind of the idea of agencies either moving away from the service model and developing products and that sort of thing, or at least diversifying in a lot of ways and sort of like drifting away from services, whether it's publishing content or hosting events, going after the same audience as they are. We've seen situations where, like, the New York Times is a publisher, but hey, they have a full agency, and it's not just like to serve ads or something. Like, they're actually coming up with creative campaigns for clients because they're the New York Times, and why not? So there's kind of this colliding of worlds, right? And this mishmash. So I don't know if I have a good question, but I just love to hear your thoughts on that and where it's going.
I think this goes back to, like, I'm a late adopter on everything. I think just because of the way we are competitive in business, right? Like, with the size of our team, with offices, internationally, we can afford to be late to stuff and catch up very quickly, right? And so these type of things I'm very interested in. A lot of these types of nuance changes to how, and ultimately, like, how do we get our clients, right? So I'm definitely paying attention to it. There's a lot of different people doing. I'm really big on, like, the webinars right now and events and conferences. We actually just hired the head of TNC. We actually just hired her to run our first conference in 2022. It'll be in August. Shout out. Stay tuned for that. And so I'm a big believer in these type of things. The high ticket is a big thing right now. Like, people paying $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 to learn something. And the stats behind this stuff, like even Tony Robbins will tell you, like I think his latest stat was like 95% of people that buy my courses never finish them. 95% of people. Like, think about that number. Think about it. I mean, it's the same as college, right? Like the percentage, how much money we spend in college versus how many people believe that college is not a decent ROI. Like, we'll just stick to that, whether it is or isn't, that's irrelevant for the conversation. But like, I was talking to someone yesterday, they're like, yeah, dude, college is just like, I think it's a complete waste of money. So you're not going to send your kids. Yeah, no, I'm definitely sending my kids. Like, it's just interesting. It's an interesting conversation, how we value money. And it's an interesting psyche on, like, I don't know if it's something like from an ego standpoint of like, I bought a $30,000 course, like I'm in a $30,000 inner circle. I'm in a, like, is a bigger high than anything else. There's actually a lot of psychology around what is the peak of adrenaline or rush. And so it's actually really interesting. It actually talks about like, where is the most excitement? And I don't know. I assume your audience is pretty adult. So is it leading up to sex or is it actual sex? It's actually leading up to sex. It's actually the biggest adrenaline we have. It's like when you like, dude, we're going to Disney next year. We're like, oh, I'm so pumped. But then when you're there, you're calm, right? Like, you're calm. And so you think about like all of these things when it comes to business, like people buy, people pay, people get excited on the what if, not the actual thing that's done. And right now the business world is playing into that. They're basically leveraging potentially this fault that we have. And they're going, hey, let's make them pay $30,000 for 6 months of marketing up front versus making them pay monthly. Because we know once they start, they're not as excited as the beginning, right? It's an interesting tactic. Will it stay around? I don't know, but I'm watching it closely, right?
Yeah, it seems like it will. What I think is like super interesting about it is it's channeling the same psychology that agencies are using to market their clients to consumers or whoever, and it's just bringing that to the business world. And I think that there's been this misconception that in the B2B business world, everyone's an adult and the same underlying evolutionary wiring doesn't apply or something. And of course it does. We're all humans making decisions. So it's definitely super interesting. And with that, I also would love to just talk about your workforce a little bit, because you're in Nicaragua now. You have a lot of your team down there. What did it take to build the team down there? Like, what are you working on when you're local there?
Yeah. So, a lot of times when people think about building a team overseas or whatever, they're going online, they're finding a VA and they're, going for it. We were completely the opposite. We built the team here, no different than you would do it in New York City, right? Like, I was physically located here. I recruited number one. I rented an office. Like, we have, like, if you're we have literally the highest building in the city. We have the top floor, and then we have 3 other floors in this building, right? And so, we're a company no different than what you would build in the States. And I think that's really key. I have, if you've seen any of my stuff on like hiring, like I'm really against like this VA, not like mantra. Like, for me, when people say I have a VA, I hear them saying, I've got a cheap person that does junk for me. Not even an employee. Like, I just have a cheap person that does stuff for me, like that's what I hear. And people are okay being called cheap people that do stuff with other people, right? But for me, if you really want to scale a company, you need team members. You need people that are committed, that you're committed to them. People that that are able to fight through the fight. In 2020, we didn't cut one salary. We didn't fire one person in 2020, right? And so we're very dedicated to our team, right? And who they are as human beings. And so what does that look like, right? Like, how does that scale and grow? So we were here for them. They all have benefits. They have retirement. Every single employee at Hite, we have all their kids on scholarship, because family is a really big piece of Hite. So we literally have a couple of employees that their tuition reimbursement for their kids, because they have so many freaking kids, their tuition reimbursement for the kids is higher than their paycheck, because making sure that our moms and dads can send their kids to a better school is more important than what they're going to make in their salary, to us anyway, right? And so how do we build a company here, man? We treat people just like we want to be treated. We hire team members. We don't hire VAs. And and hopefully, Lord willing, the idea is that they reciprocate that commitment to us as well, right? Which has been the case.
Yeah, that's really great. And you get, orders of magnitude more output for that input, I think. So
Yeah.
that matters a lot. And with that, one thing I like to ask people a lot is what does your day-to-day look like, kind of running this agency with hundreds of plus people making lots of changes? Like, what do you choose to focus on versus what are the things that you've gotten off your plate or are getting off your plate?
Yeah, I'm now at a point where I don't oversee any project at Hite anymore, like not directly. So I know that like right now, I think we have 15 projects going on at Hite. I get updates on them daily from our basically project coordinator. So I know all of that stuff going on, and I'm really big into launching the new stuff. So we're really big into M&A right now, buying agencies. So agencies doing anywhere from like $1 to $10 million in revenue. We're trying to acquire. Our goal for 2022 is to acquire, I think, 8 in total. So we're getting pretty, we're pushing it pretty hard. So I'm really interested in the M&A, side stuff. Everything else that I do. So we have the projects within the team that everyone's doing that I'm just like, okay, cool. Let me give some insight if I can. My big project again is M&A. Everything outside of that for me is culture. And so how do I improve, impact, develop the culture of Hite as much as possible? And so I'm constantly trying to figure out what can we do for them? How can we get them to travel more? How can we, what do they really want out of life? My commitment, so we talk about commitment here. My commitment is to become a leader worthy of leading the thousands of people, essentially, right? So become a leader worthy of leading thousands of people. So from how I treat my wife to how I am a dad to, how I present myself in the office to, everything, how does that impact and push through the organization, and how through that do we create an impact even globally, or even on a smaller scale here in Central America that can really change the way the workplace is handled.
Gotcha. That's super interesting, and I feel a little bit unclassy going down the M&A fork in the road as opposed to the
No, go ahead. M&A is
culture
fun,
fork
dude.
in the road, but so be it. Because I think I find myself asking the same few questions on behalf of our audience, because we have lots of $1 to $10 million agencies listening, and I love to learn, what are some of those things that when you see them positively, you're like, great, this is an agency I'm really into, and on the other side, what are those things where once you see those red flags, you're like, I'm out the door.
Good question. Yeah. So I'm kind of the opposite of most, actually. So, you can kind of think of myself as like an REI, type of guy, right? So, 10 years ago, everybody wanted to buy good real estate, new houses are going to last a long time. Now everyone's like, what's the crappiest property you've got? And then I want to buy that and flip it, right? Type of thing. I'm not quite to that extreme, but like for me, my model is I'm buying agencies, I'm turning them into franchises. I'm basically consolidating everything, right? So all the technology and tools that you're paying for, like you no longer have to pay for those. I've got them already, right? Fulfillment. How do I essentially consolidate and get your fulfillment costs dramatically down? And then I'm going to sell it off as a franchise, right? Essentially is what I'm going to do. I'm going to flip it as a franchise to someone else, typically to a big investor. And an investor is much more, again, someone that has $100 million ready to invest. Do they want an agency that maybe they have a leadership, maybe they have something, or again, a franchise, right? Like if you have a McDonald's, like it doesn't matter, hire a manager and just let them roll, right? Type of thing, because all the processes are built, all the systems are built, so on and so forth. So we're buying at market rate right now. A franchise market rate is actually much higher, and then we keep them as a franchise. So we're heavy into the acquisition model. Obviously if there's a manager in place that's staying, that is a big win, right? Like someone already there that knows the team, account managers that are already set up as good. So when I buy something, I'm going to be changing the name and the branding and all that stuff. But if the account managers are still managing the relationships with the clients, if they don't change, we're in good shape, right? The client should really never know anything happens. They still work with Mark based in Miami, Florida. Cool, right? Nothing. And so that is a huge win for us. We're going to have agencies in that scale. Specifically, what I'm looking for is agencies in the $1 to $10 million range, and that are profiting under 25%, right? Like they're having trouble finding the profitability, by the time they pay themselves, they really don't have a lot of money left over, which is a big chunk of of agencies, and I'll actually give a higher multiple than most investors simply because I know where I'm going to take it, right? I know the opportunity of it. I know what the margin should be, and how to get them there, right? And I have that advantage over any of the other investors because none of the other investors buying agencies have a fulfillment company, an operations company. We own a finance company as well. We own a real estate company as well, and that we can literally stack the agency up.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and it's definitely a model that I think will be compelling to some of our listeners. So hopefully, to reach JC, we'll get that linked up. And the other fork in the road, the culture side, that's definitely a bigger, more abstract thing. So I'd love to just learn, what's helped you the most. Is there anything that's counterintuitive? Because you hear about all these business books and all these different things to develop as a leader. Is there anything that's helped you that people might not have expected?
It's a good question. And I probably would have answered it differently years ago than probably where I would do it now, right? So I think it's so important. How do I say this? I'm going to say this. It'll be a first time. So maybe this comes out crappy and I'm like, nah, never mind. It didn't work out. I think so many times, like business owners right now, they're trying to be like, oh, let me create a great culture, right? And they're going outside of themselves and going, okay, I should be this type of company or this type of organization or this type of culture. I think I'm against that. I think that we should look at because I'm not going to leave, right? I'm the boss. You can't fire me probably, unless I get to Steve Jobs level, right? But I am me, and it's going to be hard to change who I am. Could I do it? Probably. And so how do I develop a culture around me? And through that culture, just own it and hire people that are associated with what I am, right? So let me give you an example. The organization that I left was very big into money. Everything was about money. Faith didn't care about faith at all, didn't care about family at all. Everyone cheated on their spouses. I mean, it was like drugs in the lobby. I mean, it was just crazy, right? And the problem that they had was they tried to hire people like me that were these good guys that made them a good rep and then right? And so there was always this conflict, right? Always this conflict. Now, I had the power to just leave and took out my equity and say la vie, right? But a lot of people didn't, right? And so they spent years trying to figure out, like, what does this look like? Now Hite started, and now me, like, I'd give you my shirt off my back. Like, I just love people to a fault. Like if I have $25 in my account and you need it, like, I'll probably try to figure out. It's just my nature, right? It's just who I am, right? And so I hire people very similar, right? And so once this other company started, like, hey man, we realized, like, hey man, we need to hire people like this, that money is their most important thing. Because now what happens? So everything starts to dial in, right? So like if I created a commission structure where everything was heavily financially driven, my team would not like that. The type of people I have, right? If I instead, I have a high base salary in my structure, and then I have really good benefits on top of that, right? So high base, good benefits. My people probably can't make as much as someone over here in like 90% commission, but they're very stable. So like that culture matches the type of people that I'm going to get versus the other side is more like aggressive, heady hitters, type of thing. So here's what I'll say. What does this mean, right? Culture can be anything. Culture could be aggressive. Culture could be money driven. I mean, you go to, like, if I'm on the stock exchange in New York City, I don't want soft people, right? Like I want like money hungry, aggressive fighters because every one of our clients, that's what they want, right? And so I think really understanding who you are. For me, I am okay with not being the fastest growing company in the US. Now, we're on track to be in the top 7 or 800. That's hella cool, but I would sacrifice that any day if my people were not happy, right? And so I need to hire people associated with that. And so here at Hite, our culture is really wrapped around faith and family. Does that mean everyone is religious in our company? No. Does that mean everyone has a family? No, but like these pillars really drive who we are, right? And the values that center from that, right? Like if literally outside my door across the hall is a nursery. So anyone 3 and under, kids start at 3 years old here, 3 and under is free nursery for all those kids, right? And so everything we do is around family, right? And so I think owning the culture that you embody and that you love and that makes you happy and build a company around that is more important than building the culture that you saw at Google or you saw somewhere else or whatever the case may be, because you're going to constantly have conflict. You're going to be trying to hire for this where you're this, and it's just going to be terrible, right? My friends that want to make a ton of money, dude, they crush it and they're so happy and they're da da da, and like, power to them. Their people wouldn't be good here, and our people wouldn't be good there, and that's okay.
Right. And that's really important, I think. And it sounds like you've kind of built this culture organically. And I'm wondering, like, did you know when you started your agency that that's how you wanted to do it, or was it a process? Like, how did that take shape?
It was definitely a process, I would say. Coming from a culture that was very crappy and against like my own core values, I knew very much what I wanted and didn't want to do, and we set a lot of rules in the beginning that are weird, like super weird. Like even me, as a Republican, like don't tell me what to do. Like they're weird. I'll give you an example. If you cheat on your spouse, I will fire you. Like if you have an affair, I will let you go. I don't like, there's no like hard feelings, no love, no like, but if you're going to cheat, if you're going to break the commitment to your wife, in my opinion, the biggest commitment you can make in life, if you're going to cheat on that and leave, what are you going to do to me? How committed are you going to be to me? Right? Like what's it going to take for you to leave me? And it's just, I don't want to be around it. Right. This has happened, and we've had to help someone that I really love and care about find a new job. Right. Because we have to have a little bit of a higher standard here. Does that mean I know every person that's cheated? Probably not. There's probably someone getting away with it and I don't know it. But as a culture, we cannot be like acceptant of this, right? That's weird. I know it's weird. It's probably something one day someone's going to sue me on it and probably going to have to pay out a bunch of money around it because it's probably not even legal, but it's how we operate, right? We're very big on gossip. I have a no gossip policy. So we have at Hite so far to date, we fired 8 people in 3.5 years, 8. Of those 8, I think 5 have to do with gossip. They just weren't happy. They just felt the need to always be talking crap. Like we are blessed that we have no debt in the company. We're a happy company. We don't need it. Like, I don't care who you are. If you're the greatest person in the world, like if you're going to bring negativity, like I just don't want to be around it. I'd rather retire and go live on the beach than be around, hatred. Right. And so these things make us really, really weird. I like to think we're the Chick-fil-A of digital marketing, like we're a weird freaking bunch of guys, but we're kind of together weirdness,
Yeah, it's super interesting. And do you find that it's gotten harder to maintain that culture as we've seen the shifts of the last few years and everything, or what's it been like?
It's a great question. Has it gotten harder? I think it has. Yeah, definitely. It's definitely getting harder. I think it's even potentially we're more open to things than maybe we were, once, but we do a really good job. Like our HR department we put a lot of money into our HR department, making sure that we're trying to bring in the right people. We do a lot of testing. It's hard to get on. Luckily, we built a culture where we get a lot of applicants. We get about 5 to 10 applicants a day. And normally we hire about 10 or so per month. Right. And so has it gotten harder? I think it has. But I think it's made us better, like we are a very diverse group of people, right? So I talk about religion. I'm Christian, but we have Buddhist people that work for us. We have Catholic. I heard the other day we have someone who's atheist that works with us, and that is okay. That's perfectly fine. The values of faith is what we all get aligned on, and actually, Buddhism, Christianity, Catholicism. I think there's one more other one that was like, wait, what was that again? I think we have a couple of Muslims in the group. Like the values are typically 99% the same across the board, right? And that's really what we want to hone into, right? The values.
Yeah, it's super interesting, and it's it's good that you guys are upfront about it, so you get people that are fit and everything. So it makes a lot of sense. And JC, this is great. We covered so much ground. I think we covered, almost the meaning of life, maybe not quite, but something like that. So getting towards the end of the time, how can people follow what you're up to, get in touch, all that good stuff?
Man, they have me on every social network you can imagine. I think Facebook normally stays full, but Instagram is a big one. My website, I think it's jchite.me. You can find all of my social media as well. But Instagram is probably the best. I think I'm even on TikTok or something like that as well. So I don't have the app personally, but I hear I'm on there. So hit me up anywhere you want.
Awesome, man. We'll get that linked up. Thank you so much. And look forward to having you on hopefully in the future.
Dan, I appreciate you, brother. Have a wonderful day. All right.
Yeah, you too, man.